kind of wish I had my sideboards. Hey, Opa, good to see you. All right, let's, it looks like some people are here, so let's just dive right into it. I don't want to waste any time. I'm already super tired, but yeah, good to see you guys. Let me just, hopefully the thing, I can't really check it, so I'll just look at it this way. All right, we got the face cam on because no moto necessary. And no, it is not Vintage Cube time, Pure Gosu. Nice effort as always. Right now, it's time to quickly recap my decks at CubeCon. So for starters, I just wanted to say I'm really grateful that I was even able to enter the main event. It was not part of my plan at all. I showed up. I thought, okay, I'm just dropping off my cube, and I'm gonna watch some of the drafts. Maybe I'll meet up with some friends, whatever. But I just didn't think I could swing the entry fee, if I'm being really frank. And so I found out that actually content creators are able to get in for free. I was really kind of skeptical that would end up working out for me. And the short story is I talked to BK, the guy organizing pretty much all of CubeCon, like managing the whole thing, and it did end up working out. So I was able to play in some main event drafts. Didn't play in all that many of them, but basically it was super sweet. And I was really just excited to be able to do it. So yeah, without further ado, now to talk a little bit about the 3 cubes that I drafted, how things went, what I thought of my deck, what I thought of my play, my opponents, everything like that. Because I mean, that stuff is, I don't know, it's fun to talk about. It's interesting. You don't get to like say when you're sitting across from your opponent, like exactly what you thought of them, right? Or, exactly what I thought of my plays. Like it's not appropriate if I beat someone to tell them that I think that I played really poorly. And on that note, I did not play this deck very well. So this is the Peasant Plus cube. I liked all the cubes that I drafted. I liked all the decks that I drafted. I feel like basically I did a good job in all 3 of them. This was my least favorite. This one, okay, here's maybe a good example of something that doesn't make sense to me, right? So this is a Peasant Plus cube. Peasant Plus, a lot of the time, basically what that suggests is you're playing with spells that are commons and uncommons, and you're playing with lands that are at least sometimes rares. And hey, Mercurio, good to see you. Yeah, and so playing with rare lands is actually a great innovation for Peasant cubes, because otherwise, basically the fixing does not match up. There's the question of whether or not it's actually important to remove every rare from a cube that's at this relatively lower power level. I used to be strongly kind of in favor of like, well, how much good gameplay can you really have with rares in there? And now I've really swung back in the other direction, and I'm a big fan of trying to find rares that are a good fit. One thing that I will mention here, just, taking a look at this list, that I feel like is not a particularly good fit is Maze of Ith, right? Because the whole point of rare lands is to have extra good fixing, right? It's Peasant cube with extra steps. Maze of Ith does not do that. Maze of Ith is not fixing. Yes, it's a rare land, so like technically, kind of fits the bill there, but it just doesn't really make sense. And it was absurdly good. I was playing against, in round 2 of this cube, I was playing against my opponent who had Loxodon Warhammer. I was just about completely cold to that card. So this deck, I nicknamed it Oops All FTKs, because I have like 4 FTKs in this deck. I have Flametongue Yearling, Twin Shot Sniper, Murderous Redcap, and Noise Marine, 4 FTKs. Not particularly good against an opponent who's just able to throw some crap onto a Loxodon Warhammer and then just kill me. However, Loxodon Warhammer, pretty darn bad against Maze of Ith. Also, so it's like, you have 2 relatively uninteractive card types, right? I mean, artifacts, at least, like, it's the kind of thing where, yeah, maybe if I knew the cube, I could have maybe drafted in a Braid, and then at that point I have like 1 out to the Warhammer, apart from the Maze of Ith. The Maze of Ith, on the other hand, there are no outs to that. And so the reason I'm dwelling on this is because, well, I dwelled on this one during during the draft. This was my one match that went to time. I won round one, and I think I won round one relatively handily. Yeah, I think I did. And I was playing against more or less. Yes, Mazavith is super annoying, and I mean it's like I don't know. I like some of these like classical defects that you don't get to play anywhere else, and I got to do some tricks where it's like okay, attack with my thing and then untap it, and then I have my guy untapped, and like I can use the guy to crew the Night Scythe or whatever, like do some nonsense. But for the most part, it's just really not worth it. Also, like the 40k cards were like really insane. Noise Marine and Sicarian Infiltrator. Noise Marine, spoiler alert, got that one twice over the course of this CubeCon. But yeah, anyway, I really don't think that this is how sort of like the rule of thumb that you should have when designing peasant cubes. Like I don't think it should be like sort of like, yes, technically everything is like a common and uncommon, and then like yeah, technically the only cards that are rares are lands. Like I don't think it should be something that exists in the space of like, well, look, I followed the rules that I, laid out for myself for the most part. I think it should be more about in the spirit of whether or not you followed your own rules. But anyway, enough about that. Yes, Noise Marine's awesome. If you like broken cards. So yeah, round one, I don't think my opponent's deck was necessarily super functional, or just, kind of didn't come together in a way that really worked for him. I also slightly misbuilt this deck. Like Treasure Cruise, for instance, was not in the initial build of the deck, but I ended up just putting a ton of stuff into my graveyard. Also, like Fearfire Foes, I've played that card a couple times, so I was like, yeah, I can have this thing start in my main deck. I feel like this card's good enough for that. I wasn't sure about Firebolt because, again, it felt like all my removal spells kind of just did the same thing. It's like, here's a shock, here's a shock. I mean, this is literally, it has shock in the name, and then Firebolt, it's like, I don't know. Does that really add very much? Flame Tongue Yearling, also kind of a shock. But it did end up feeling correct to do that. And I did have Fire Magic along with Pyroclasm initially in the sideboard. And then over time, I realized that Fire Magic is not only powerful enough, but also flexible enough to warrant a main deck inclusion, whereas Pyroclasm, obviously, much less flexible. So round two, I was paired against someone who had, I don't know, at least like 4 trophy pins or something like that. So very clearly someone who had been really successful. And I was just pretty nervous, like hadn't played any paper Magic, and I kind of felt like I was more or less like playing my finals match in round two. Anyway, it just felt kind of weird, and I think my nerves like really got to me, and it wasn't like I was blundering left and right, but I definitely made a bunch of at least, meaningful yet minor inaccuracies. I really don't know if I could have won round two. I don't think I could. So again, that one was the one that went to a draw. And yeah, I mean, it was just like my opponent just puts an enormous like life linker out that I basically can't attack through. And then I just have Mazavith, and we're just having this stupid staring contest. And my opponent almost killed me. He had like Flicker Wisp and Glimmer Point Stag to blink out the Mazavith, which is hilarious because at that point it's like left the battlefield in time to allow like an attack with the Warhammer. But at that point, like I had already kind of stabilized. I mean, my deck was pretty cool. Bunch of FTKs and then also Crystal Shard to like bounce them. Also Winter Eladrin or whatever to do something similar. I had Third Path Iconoclast, which is so much better than Young Pyromancer. I also had like a Young Pyromancer, I think, in my sideboard. But you wouldn't trigger your Pyromancer off Night Scythe, for instance, or off Kasmina. Behold the Unspeakable was pretty good for me. I never got the draw 4. It was always Scry 2, draw 2. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Oh yeah, and then Force of Will. I guess I also had Force of Will twice, weirdly enough. I was just all Force of Wills and Noise Marines this time. But yeah, this is another one. I mean, come on, it literally has a mythic symbol. If we're talking about like, oh, technically an uncommon, I think this is like kind of the best example of that. It just really does not. I don't know, it just doesn't fit in my opinion. But hey, that's just my opinion. Still had a fun time. The one thing I will say in terms of game states that I was happy about, because again, I really don't feel good about how I played this, especially the round two. Um, I set up something really, really nice with fire magic. So I had a 1/1 Evora. I had like a Noise Marine, Night Scythe. I had like a Twin Shot Sniper and a Murderous Redcap, something like that. And so I attack with the Evora and I have 1 blood in play. My opponent declines to block. I rummage with the blood, growing the Evora, and then Evora connects. I make another blood. I rummage again. So Evora is now a 3/3. So basically, I'm trying to grow my stuff out of the Pyroclasm range of the fire magic. So Sniper's going to live, Evora's going to live, Night Scythe is not crude, so that's going to live. Noise Marine's going to die, and Cap is going to die, but Red Cap actually needs to die because the opponent has 1x3. So basically, I'm able to wipe the opponent's entire board and keep like 3 of my guys intact with the fire magic. So that was really nice. Fire magic was great. That card was really good. So that was sweet. And then I do have to talk at least a little bit about the round 3. The round 3 was pretty annoying. I mentioned misbuilding and like misplaying and stuff like that. My mana was slightly wrong. I had like 1 mountain too many. I almost made that mistake twice. I almost made that mistake with another deck, just like skewing my mana a little bit too much in the favor of like my predominant color. Thankfully, I didn't do that actually with another deck, even though I was worried about it. I was just like sitting there on mountains, and my opponent's like this Esper control deck, and just like kills me because I couldn't cast like most of my spells. And so then I board in like the island that I definitely should have boarded in before. And I think I won off like a crystal shard, basically. Like crystal shard was really good. I think that opponent kept playing into crystal shard. I had opponents make some weird plays. Like that's not where most of my attention was focused, but I had one opponent later who was like very, very passive, like a really good deck, seemed like a pretty good player, but just like never attacked me for some reason, just because he thought that I was the beatdown like always, which is just not how that works. Anyway, and then this opponent, like it would be like he would like tap out to like cast Lingering Souls or flashback Lingering Souls, and I'd be like, okay, I'll get rid of half of that for free. Anyway, so I had this nice play. So the opponent had like I want to say it was like I think I had Kasmina, and I like played Kasmina, down ticked it, and this opponent too was also like talking about how like Palace Jailer was like really, really good and like way too good for the cube and all this stuff. Which then at the end he was talking about how actually basically his own Palace Jailer killed him. But it killed him in a very nice way, which was, so I down-ticked the Kasmina, he plays the Palace Jailer, exiles the Kasmina token, and this is after I've down-ticked putting Firebolt in the graveyard. But then I down-tick again, putting Scrapwork Mutt in the graveyard. I wanted to cast the Scrapwork Mutt because, I mean, there's a reason that I didn't discard that in the first place. I thought just like having an extra body and threat would have been more valuable, and then also like if I have the Scrapwork Mutt cast as opposed to unearthed, then I can do stuff like Crystal Shard it back in my hand or whatever, whereas when you unearth it, you can't do that. But I get to put the Scrapwork Mutt into the graveyard, and then I don't remember how, one of my many ways of killing the Palace Jailer, I killed the Palace Jailer, and then unearthed the Scrapwork Mutt, hit the opponent, and then the opponent proceeds to be locked under the Monarch for the rest of the game, and I win super handily. But also the opponent like tried to do this like annoying like rules lawyer thing against me because I accidentally like missed my like Behold the Unspeakable like third trigger, as in like one that's very, just about meaningless. At the time it was just like, either I have a summoning sick like 3/3 flying trample or I don't or whatever. And like you could like, he was pretty clearly, I mean, he called judge, and thankfully none of the judges heard him, and he was just like, it's fine, whatever, like clearly not in a hurry to be a good sport. And then I proceeded to like deal him millions, and he died. And he was like, man, I shouldn't have like let you like flip that, behold the unspeakable. And I just got to be like, well, I don't think it would have mattered. Sorry. um, yeah, so that was that. That was very satisfying. Again, not perfect. Misbuilt the deck. Was really nervous. That wasn't perfect either. And then misplayed a bunch in round two. So not great. But still, decently fun. Not a bad start. And got a trophy pin out of the deal. And the guy who didn't want to basically split the trophy pin for the match win didn't get a trophy pin. So hashtag always split. All right, deck number 2. Hopefully that wasn't too long already. Okay, so deck number 2, this was insane. This was the Cascade Cube. This was very complicated. This was super interesting. So the description of this cube said that it was very spiky, which is true. I mean, there were absolutely a lot of really spiky things about this cube. I think the number one thing about this cube is it was almost impossible to like easily manage the board state. Like, well, I mean, easily, yeah, is really just not even part of it. Like, managing the board state in this cube was a nightmare. Like, I thought that was a nightmare with my cube, the sci-fi cube. That was much easier. Like, the sci-fi cube, the overwhelming thing about managing the board state is like the sheer number of game objects. This is like a judge's tower kind of thing. This is like, okay, every time someone does something, like 3 other things happen, you have to remember the exact order, and like, if you miss like one thing, then like everything is wrong. But despite that, really, really, really fun. I think pretty easily the most fun that I had. Yeah, definitely pretty easily the most fun that I had. The only thing that I would say was really not fun, was kind of the thing that I sort of had already heard about, the 0-drop artifacts, which played out kind of exactly as I expected, if not even more powerfully. So the funny thing about this cube, and I guess I'll scryfall this for you guys. So you don't have any real quote-unquote Moxen, but you do have Mox Tantalite, and you also have, there it is, and Soul Talisman. So the idea with this cube, the gimmick is everybody starts with a Maelstrom Nexus emblem on the battlefield. So in other words, if you like pick up one of these, either Soul Talisman or Mox Tantalite, aka Gleemox and Soul Ring, basically, any time you cast a 1-drop, and you should have a bunch of 1-drops, you basically just start with, whichever 0 on the battlefield. And so in round 1, I had to play against someone with both of those cards and Mox Diamond. And so it was like, what? Like, so you're telling me my opponent has like 5 or 6 mana when I have like 2? Like every game, like incredibly consistently. So that was very obnoxious. And I knew, like, I understood that was something that could happen, but like the fact that like my opponent got not only the 2 best cards in the entire cube, but like on top of that, yes, not exactly balanced. And I don't think it's supposed to be. Like, I think it's supposed to be like do this, fun thing. But I think, unfortunately, my opinion on that is like it really loses replayability, especially because it's a 360 card cube. And so the effect of that is like, you sit down, you draft the thing in paper, and you're like, all right, I didn't open the 0s. Who did? And then you just have to look around the table and pray that, it's not like the same person who got both, or pray that like nobody passed, the busted cards like to the same person somehow, or, whatever. But that is unfortunately what happened. I did get one. I got Mox Opal. Also, like, I really wasn't sure about this. I don't remember the exact pick, but I had 2 border posts in the pack. I had the Demir one and the Rakdos one. And I want to say the card that I took over them was Pyrogoyf. I mean, Pyrogoyf is obviously a very powerful magic card. I later in this draft had to pass Barogoyf, which that was horrible. I mean, if you think about, some of the more powerful things to do in Vintage Cube, like Barogoyf and Pyrogoyf, like those cards are both excellent and they're synergistic. So that was incredibly painful to pass the Barogoyf. But I do think it ended up working out. Anyway, going back to the border posts. So at the time I was like, I was pretty confident the border posts were good, but I was taking something good enough out of the pack that I was thinking, well, I can maybe wheel one border post. And then of course the pack comes around and there are none. I don't remember all of my picks here. But I remember pretty clearly in pack one, I identified that blue was open. Red did not seem nearly as open. Oh, I think I started pack one, pick one, Solitude. Yeah, so I started with Solitude, which I thought would be pretty good. I mean, obviously not as good as the Broken Zeros. But then there were like no white cards. And then I looked over to my neighbor's deck after the draft, and that person wasn't in white. So I don't know where the white cards were. This is also just something that happens when packs aren't color balanced, which is, it has nothing to do with the designer. It has everything to do with kind of the paper, nature of the setup at CubeCon. So just like kind of annoying that like, normally like if you pivot out of a color and it seems like it was correct to do or whatever, it shouldn't just have to do with the packs being like really thin. Like that's so random. Anyway, whatever. Oh, also funny too, because here I took Muldrifter and I passed Muldrifter in the the peasant cube. I think I don't know if it was Noise Marine or Monstrosaur, but anyway, Muldrifter was very, very difficult for me to play against in that one because the opponent had Soul Herder and was just blinking it. Anyway, whatever. But so pack two, pick one. I opened the pack and I was just looking at this Mox Opal and I was like, all right, I have like not very many artifacts. Like I think I had like the map token that the Spyglass Siren makes. I want to say I had maybe like one other artifact, like basically almost none. Or maybe I got like a late Metamorph. I don't remember. I did get a late Metamorph. I don't remember if it was before or after the Mox Opal, but the point was, I'm just staring at the Mox Opal and I'm thinking, okay, like blue feels open. Like, I didn't wheel a border post, but like I have to do what I can, whatever. And so I take the Mox Opal and it ends up being very, very easily like the most important card in the deck. And so it did end up working out. I feel like I had kind of just enough artifacts for it to get there. And remember there's, basically that knowledge of whenever you cast a 1-drop, it's guaranteed to like put the Mox Opal onto the battlefield. And so that's very good, of course, with Spyglass Siren, pretty good with Chromatic Sphere, right? Like these 1-drops that are also either an artifact or producing an artifact themselves. Speaking of like kind of being certain to cascade into things, like I don't have all that many 1s, and one of my 2s is Dreadhorde Arcanist. And so I have Serum Visions and Chain Lightning as really nice cards that the Arcanist can cascade into and then recast, which is like pretty sick. And, even if the Arcanist doesn't cascade into them, more likely than not, at least one of them will end up in my graveyard at some point. So the Arcanist was actually amazing. Hopefully it's not Arcanist, because then I would be pronouncing it wrong over and over. But anyway, regardless, yeah, so those were... Oh, Don Manos, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. Good to see you, by the way. Anyway, so that was really nice. Dreadhorde package with only 2 spells, and it worked out great. One of the things too about this cube, so I counted obviously the non-basic lands as lands, but also the border posts. And then I ended up playing roughly 13 lands, which I think is what is suggested. I mean, this cube was just so awesome, though, that like there's so many amazing things about this cube. It's just so intricate, and like the amount of like thinking you have to do to try to figure out like what's gonna work and what line to take. It's definitely not like the most balanced thing ever. I think this was kind of the perfect place to play it because I really was not, yeah, I literally had no aspirations for top 128 because I just didn't enter enough drafts to even come close. Um, I got to cascade into Delayed Blast Fireball at least twice. Like that was super sick. I had Force of Will again. Force of Will was great. Force of Will saved my bacon. There's a funny interaction too where I had Force of Will and Foil, and because Maelstrom Nexus cascades the first spell you cast each turn, it's really really good to have a free spell on the opponent's turn, because then you're getting like more mileage out of your cascade. So that was like a huge part of this deck's game plan as well, because I had Brazen Borrower and Bone Crusher Giant. Um, and like both of those have instant speed adventures, also like Vendilion Click, just like random stuff to do at instant speed. um and so yeah, all of that stuff was just like awesome, really really nice. Trying to maximize my cascades. There's a weird rule that hopefully the judges told me correctly. I kind of lost all confidence that they like actually knew how this rule worked, because I asked them about the rule and then they told me an answer, and then I gave them like a little bit of info that there was like a kind of printed out like primer of the cube, that had that info, and then it sort of contradicted what they said, and then they were like, let me check on that. But anyway, the point was yeah, this was super fun. This was one of the most fun paper drafts I've ever done. um anyway, but the ruling was, how does it work to cascade into an adventure? And it's interesting because Brazen Borrower and Bone Crusher Giant actually have the same mana values, both for like each one has an adventure mana value 2, and each one is the spell mana value 3. Um, well, there are cube events in Europe. I'll post a link in the chat in a bit, but I don't know exactly where you are in Europe, but I do know there are at least some cube events there, even if it's not particularly close to you. Anyway, so they told me that, like, if you were to cast a 3-drop, for instance, you can't cascade into Bone Crusher Giant, into the Stomp, or you can't cascade into the Petty Theft of the Brazen Borrower. So you would need to cast a 4-drop to cascade into Bone Crusher or Brazen Borrower. But at that point, because Stomp and Petty Theft also cost 3 or less, you could choose to cast one of those instead of casting the main spell. So that's how that worked. Yeah, anyway, my deck was just insane. Like, it wasn't like literally perfect. I did have some awkward things happen. Like, I had to lava spike people with the Chain Lightning, and Apocryphite was really bad. That card is terrible. I don't think that card should be in the cube. Because the idea with Apocryphite is, if it enters from anywhere other than your hand in terms of where it's cast from, then it has the counters. But the problem is, this cube goes so fast that, like, I want to say turn 3 or something, I like had this thing in play and then sacked it to the Sidisi's Faithful for the exploit. And then the game was so fast that, like, in terms of turns, not in terms of time. Anyway, that even though I sacked this really early on, it never even came off suspend. So I don't know. 2-mana 1/1 that does nothing, I think, is not very good unless you cascade into it. Like, I understand that's the idea, but still I don't like it very much. Lots of these cards are really cool and really nice. Vendilion Click was very cool. Force of Will is awesome. Foil's really cool. Also, I like that these free counterspells are like relatively expensive. So you're not like, casting your cheap spells and then hitting your free counters and being like, why did I put this in my deck? Yeah, so those were really nice. I did once like impending an Overlord of the Flood Pits and hit foil, and I was just like, well, that wasn't great. But for the most part, it was fine. Thoughtcast ended up being really good because, again, I'm trying to play a Mox Opal deck. The border posts were really good. Even the green-white double off-color border post was very, very clearly worth it. So that was nice. I got to do something sick with Pyrogoyf and Phyrexian Metamorph because when you copy the pyroglyph, the metamorph triggers as a pyroglyph, and it triggers as another lurgoyf creature entering. So you get 2 triggers from that. So that was sick. I like somehow killed someone with Slick Shot Show Off in a game where I like didn't have any red mana, which was I don't even know what happened there. But yeah, it was just like there was so much thinking, and like you're basically like tutoring a bunch of your cards, and like Serum Visions, for instance, like setting up Delayed Blast Fireball. That was really nice. I kept like putting cards like top, because then I would need to draw whichever card like wasn't the DBF, like a land, for instance, and then I would like cast Karn or something, and then like cascade into DBF. Everything takes 5, they die, whatever. I don't know. It's just super sweet. Also, just a good amount of burn here. Chain Lightning, Incendiary Flow, Bone Crusher, like Slick Shot, like even the Arcanist, like yeah, it just all kind of worked out together really nicely. Anything else to say about this deck? Incendiary Flow is a weird choice. I don't understand why this is in the cube. Just make this like any like 2 mana instant speed Lightning Bolt would be my opinion. But yeah, anyway, really nice draft, very, very fun. Unfortunately died to the broken mana rocks. Oh, I didn't even mention this part. In this one I mentioned that I felt like my play was like pretty sloppy, and I kept making like inaccuracies and just like not quite thinking things through. When I had the one Scrapwork Mutt line and killing the Jailer and taking back the Monarch and locking the opponent out, I had that line really, really fast. But yeah, for the most part, I was just really clumsy and, not exactly doing things very well. This one, I played this really, really well. I'm really happy about how I played this. There was like one thing that I almost did wrong, and if I did it wrong, oh man, it would have killed me. I am almost certain if I made this mistake, it would have straight up cost me the game. I played a Pyroglyph, I had a bunch of damage, but as it feels like is always the case in this kind of tense board state, I could have like put my opponent to like 1, or maybe it was 2. And so I would like play the Pyroglyph, and a lot of the time like a good heuristic with Pyroglyph is like if it's entering and dealing like 4 or 5 damage, and if they just have like some tiny dudes, don't kill the tiny dudes, right? Like because you're kind of wasting excess damage. Like at some point, just pointing a lot of damage at their face will just kill them. Like that's just a good thing to do. Anyway, so my opponent had kindly revealed their hand and kept their hand revealed because I had Vendilion clicked them, and I declined to switch any of their cards out because they were mana screwed. And if I gave them an extra draw, that would mean that they would be closer to finding a land. And it doesn't really matter which card I would have gotten rid of, because the reality is like, just getting them closer to a land would have been the worst thing I could do. And so my opponent had like the Nissa with like completed Nissa with like double Phyrexian mana, and they had like the Kami of Whispered Hopes or whatever, but it had like at least 1 or 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And so I'm Pyroglyphing, and I'm like about to hit their face, and like, or I think I already did. Yeah, so I like domed them for like 4, and then I was like, oh my god, I just let my opponent have this giant overrun on the Nissa. Like the Nissa that they kindly kept revealed for me after I clicked them. And I'm just staring there at the Kami of Whispered Hopes. And thankfully it was like half of a second later, and I started to ask about, like, I was like, I'm sorry, can I target the correct thing there? And my opponent was like, well, like now that, you could tell like my opponent was about to basically say no. But my opponent just missed like 4 counters on the Ozolith or something. And so I was like, I don't know, I just let you have those Ozolith counters back. And he was like, yeah, all right, fine. And so like, I don't know. I guess one thing I'll say about this is it was really, really nice of my opponent to do this, especially, and I mean, my opponent doesn't necessarily know this. But if he didn't let me take that back, I do just lose, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if I just lose if I deny him the Ozolith counters, but I really don't feel like that's what Magic is supposed to be about. And I think that's kind of like a major theme of my experience in this. Like I just got to like try to win, but also like have a good time if I lost, assuming that, you know, whoever was beating me was like a good sport, whatever. Um like normally, you know, I show up to something like this and I just try to be like so sweaty and I'm just like there to, yeah, another Gaudium for sure. Um anyway, it's like, yeah, I just want to win and like that's the only thing that matters and like you know, I just need to make top 128. I have to win these matches because that's the only way you make the cut. And when none of that's at stake, it's like, well, I can just show up and see what happens. Like, you know, my opponent misses a million Ozolith things, I miss a Pyroglyph thing, like, you know, whatever. Like, we're all human. We're just trying to maintain the board state in this incredibly complicated cube. Yeah. And so that was pretty much that. And then round three, I got insanely lucky. My opponent's deck seemed like it had some really, really strong potential to pop off. Opponent had like Urza's Saga, which is terrifying, and like Talarian Academy. I don't remember everything else, but basically, sort of a mirror match. Opponent was a lot more dedicated to the artifacts theme than I was. Oh, also Urza, just some like, you know, really good kind of vintage cube like blue artifact cards. But thankfully, opponent goes for like Kappa Cannoneer, another one of those cards, and I have Force of Will. And this is like turn 2 or something after the opponent's like played a Mana Vault. And so I go Force of Will, Cascade into See the Truth. So basically I just went 0 mana, counter your spell, Ancestral Recall. Like, like opponent's like 2 mana, you know, 5/5 unblockable, effectively like hexproof. And I'm like, what if I like got rid of that and then did this other thing that like won the game? So that was really nice. Also absurdly lucky. I didn't mention that I top decked a border post. One of the interesting things about this cube too is like, what are you supposed to do if it's like turn, you know, you're looking at your opener and you don't have a turn 1 play, because it's really important to get on the board early in this cube. But I was like, I don't know, you know, heart of the cards. At some point, you just can't like mull a hand that looks really functional. At least that's my opinion. And I just top decked the border post. I was on the draw, found the border posted into, God, I don't remember, something good, and then then it worked out. So that was great. And then there's also a judge right next to me as I went, like for the Serum Visions or whatever to like put the Delayed Blast Fireball and another card on top of the library, and then next turn, like Karn Cascade into the DBF, and the judge was just like, he was just like, oh, he like couldn't believe it. He was just like blown away. So that was really fun. Okay, so that was this one. This one was a really, really good time. Yeah, not the kind of Magic I would play normally either. I think I might have already said this, but just like, you know, there's a reason I never played this in a main event before. There's a lot of variance, I feel like, kind of implied in something like this. But, you know, just because I wouldn't normally play it in a main event doesn't mean that it couldn't be a blast, or a delayed blast, as it were. All right. Last but not least, the third and final deck here. This was from my friend Soph's budget synergy cube. I've played this cube a couple times before. I think at least once before I played Selesnya and lost to Selesnya in the finals. So I definitely had a Selesnya bias going into this. And this was really nice. Yeah, I was definitely happy with this as well. Power level wise, this is much closer to like what I'm comfortable with. I feel like this is like very, very clearly, you know, like similar to the Peasant Plus cube in terms of power level, except way more balanced. So maybe a good example of that. And, you know, this isn't like something that I'm 100% certain of. It's more of like a vibes kind of thing. So again, remember, if we look at this and we're like, oh, look, Force of Will, technically an uncommon, and it's like, oh, Maze of Ith, well, it's Peasant Plus cube, and the only rares in this cube are lands, so Maze of Ith is allowed. I don't think you would ever find something like that in Soph's cube. I don't think Soph is ever going to be like, yeah, I'll just throw in Maze of Ith, or like, yeah, I'll just like throw in Force of Will. I think Soph is, much more interested in things kind of feeling balanced. And again, this power level, like, yeah, I'm just quite happy with this and how this kind of thing plays. One other thing as well, I didn't actually mention this from before. Um, there was not very much fixing, and there's variance involved, right? Like, who knows whether the entire cube or whatever was open for this one. Like, I mean, look at this is horrible. I have two non-basic lands that actually produce mana. I counted this one as a spell, by the way. I have this, which is basically a basic sort of like a Prismatic Vista variant. And then there's this, which I'm playing just to, manipulate my library. So I don't have any blue-red duels, really. And, like, I don't think Multiversal Passage counts as a duel. Exactly. I mean, it counts as a source of each color, but it's not a dual land. Anyway, whatever. Whereas this cube, it was like, I passed so many lands, and I still got 6 non-basics I was happy to play. And there was like a 7th non-basic that I could have played to fix my mana in the sideboard. And so, I don't know exactly how much of that is just sort of the randomness of the way the cubes shook out. But what I can tell you is this just felt so nice. Felt so nice to be able to get the lands. Felt so nice to not have to worry about like random BS Palace Jailer-esque, like, oh look, it's an uncommon, So really happy about all that. One thing I'll mention too, because this felt really nice, and I don't know. So at this point, by the way, I was already in what they called like the not dead after all, or not dead yet draft, because really everyone in this draft was dead, as in they were dead for top 128, which obviously, I mean, if you look at the fact that I only did 2 drafts before this, whereas most people did like 5, yeah, I'm not going to be able to compete with people who did more than twice as many drafts before as I did. But regardless, basically because of that, you could kind of infer that like the table was going to be like maybe a little bit softer or like less competitive, whatever. And so, I say that to kind of, in other words, say like, I'm not sure exactly how likely the draft would be to shake out like this in a real, well, not real, but in like a regular main event draft of it. Whereas like this one, for instance, right, like I didn't wheel either of the border posts, which I kind of thought, maybe there's a chance I could get one of these back, like if people don't recognize how good they are. I didn't get either of the border posts that I passed back, so people definitely recognized how good they were. Basically, my point is, I think if the same pod that I was drafting with in the Cascade Cube drafted with me in the Budget Synergy Cube, my results might really have varied, or my mileage, I guess. Yeah, so I could have ended up with a much worse deck. But what happened, a couple things happened that were pretty nice. I wheeled this Chancery, I think, which, in my opinion, was like one of the better cards in the pack in the first place. It wasn't amazing for me, admittedly, and it's only semi on color, so it's not absurd. But something else happened that was really, really nice, and led me to this version of the deck, which I think was much more powerful than the other version that I could have ended up with. And I was just really happy to end up here. So I wheeled a Questing Druid in pack 2. And I was kind of feeling weird about the signals. It was like, oh, and yeah, signals were also just a little bit all over the place. And, pivoting and things like that. So here I mentioned that I started pack 1, pick 1 Solitude, and then had to give up. It wasn't too bad after that. I was like, yeah, I'm playing blue-red, probably. I guess I took an Inquisition of Kozilek in this one. So there was like a brief moment where I was considering playing black, but anyway, did not play black. And then this one I took like Harmonize, and I took like Trash the Town, which I think is kind of busted. And so I was like, I really thought I was Gruul, because I had like, I don't remember which one, but I had one of the FTKs, and I just like, I had some nice red cards, and I was like, all right, I'm Gruul. And then there was like no green. And then I think again, it wasn't even, I don't even know if it was the person passing to me who was in green. Anyway, just weird things happening. I only missed like 2 picks, but I still really, really felt it. And then, yeah, anyway, whatever. But it did kind of work out. So going back to this, I took a skin render and then couldn't play it. But I kind of knew immediately that I wasn't going to be able to play the skin render. This one, I think I started, gosh, what was it? I took Hanged Executioner really highly. Oh, wait. Oh, one of the cards that I took highly here, I actually cut from the deck in the end. It's this super weird card. I don't really feel like looking it up, but I'll just tell you guys what it does. It's 1 and 2 red-white hybrid pips, so 3 total mana for a 3/3, and it has this battalion ability, so where it and 2 other creatures attack, you exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card on any turn where at least 3 creatures you control have attacked. So basically, yeah, anyway, I don't know. Hopefully it makes sense. Battalion synergy, you impulse draw, but then you can play it on any battalion turn. So I thought I was going to be a go wide deck. I went like that card into Hanged Executioner, which seemed like a really nice follow-up, into Captured by Legax, which I thought, I was like, all right, this looks great. So I'm going to be this like Selesnya go wide deck, whatever. So you might notice looking at my deck that I have pretty much no cards that allow me to go wide. And I even cut from the final build, I even cut that one card that I mentioned. So I had a relatively seamless sort of pivot into this bizarre Naya +1/+1 counters thing. But the reason that pivot worked out, and it really was just about seamless. So I had this questing druid wheel to me, right? And I was looking at that, and it was like that versus like a green-white land. And this is like the exact kind of thing that wouldn't have happened here, right? Like, this environment where I'm like, well, I have no fixing. Like, I guess I better take this land because I'm not going to get another one. This one, I was like, well, I don't really need this green-white land. Like, it would help me. Obviously, it would help me. But this is like just a powerful card and a really interesting card to speculate on. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this and see where it leads me. And I had this feeling, I was like, I don't know, maybe red will happen or work out. And so almost immediately, I think actually it was the next pick, I then wheel a Sheltered Thicket, which is like perfect. So I was very happy with that. And then I proceed to wheel Thrash Threat, which, I like this card as well. And I looked at it the first time and I was like, well, I'm not red, so I don't have access to both halves of the card. And like the bite effect on its own is only so good. But now that I'm like settled into splashing red anyway for the Questing Druid, the Seek the Beast, I'm much happier to play that with the Thrash Threat. Not to mention, obviously, the Sheltered Thicket as a piece of fixing. I think I already had the Terramorphic Expanse as well, so that made things a bit easier. Also, fun little thing here, even if you cast Thrash, which is green-green, you might think that green spells don't trigger the Questing Druid, but that's actually not how it works. It doesn't say whenever you cast a non-green spell, it just cares about the spell being another color. So this actually does trigger Questing Druid and did in the game as well. And then I want to say pack 3, pick 1 at this point, something like that. I took my boy, Noise Marine, same card as here. Though in this one, definitely I think a bit better. Like I have the Crystal Shard to pick it up if I wanted to do that. I have some 1-mana spells to cast if I want Noise Marine to enter and deal 3 to something. Also, I can like use the shock here in conjunction with like another shock or whatever to like finish something off. Anyway, so I do think Noise Marine was better in the other one, but it's still just a sick card. Very, very powerful card. For anyone who can't read the tiny little text there, 5 mana for a 3/2 that cascades. So you're going to cascade. And then when it enters, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of spells you've cast this turn, which should always be minimum of 2, given that you're cascading into something and that you've cast this itself. I mean, you can flicker it and then it'll only deal 1 if the flicker was a spell that you cast. But yeah, anyway, still just very, very good. Happy to splash it. Then I got this random super late Voldaren Thrillseeker as well. This card's really good, I think. And it was really sweet. And I just ended up, I had so much synergy in this deck. I really thought this deck was sweet because I kept doing things, for instance, with Basking Brood Scale, where it's like I'm just finding other ways to put like +1/+1 counters on this with like Captured by Legax. I'm sure there were some other ways to do it as well. I guess Bannerhide Crew Shock, that came up, like proliferating onto this after it already had a counter, things like that. Yeah, this deck definitely did do stuff. And then there was Evolution Witness, so printed in the same set, of course, as the Brood Scale and kind of similar +1/+1 counter synergy. I discovered a combo that nobody knew about. I mean, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but Bannerhide Crew Shock plus Evolution Witness is actually just so. I'm sorry, my phone. I don't understand why my phone keeps turning off, but let me just get rid of that. So what you can do is, like, let's say you adapt, right? Get whatever back. Maybe it's the Crew Shock, maybe it's something else, and then you have a 4/3. But this only cares about when counters are placed on it. It doesn't care about, only doing it when it adapts. So what that means is you can then Crew Shock reinforce onto the Witness. Witness now sees that you've put a permanent into the graveyard, which you can now return, right? This is in the graveyard before the reinforce resolves and before this resolves. So then basically you just get to like do this over and over. And so you just have an enormous Evolution Witness. So that was super sick. I was really happy about that. Also, we were like drawing cards all over the place, thanks to something like this. We were doing all kinds of like mill shenanigans. We were like milling with Rumble, milling with Lacid Prowler. We were putting like Bannerhide Crew Shock into the graveyard and the Prowler and the Honored Hydra. I think at one point I like cast Rumble and like milled all 3 of these, which was ridiculous. I had Satyr Wayfinder. Oh, well, I mean, I guess I'll get to that in a second because that was extremely painful. But this deck was just unbeatable. I was, I guess I wasn't 2-0-4-0 in games. I was 2-0-4-1 in games going into round 3 because I played against this Boros deck. And man, like, I loved this deck. And I really like Soph, and it was a sweet cube, and I'm always happy to play this cube. I will say one thing. Playing against the Boros deck just kind of made it painfully clear to me how hard it was to come back from being on the draw. Because the Boros deck on the play was just like, you can never beat this. Like, they literally had over 10 tokens. They're just like, Young Pyromancer, Raise the Alarm, like, Hordeling Outburst. Just a horde of 1/1s against my deck that has 0 counterplay for that. And I'm just like sitting there like, I guess I die. I'm like, it was so embarrassing too, because I had to do the math before conceding. I can't just like concede. So I was like, okay, I Brood Scale, and then I make, I adapt, and then that makes a token. I play the Thrill Seeker, and then I put the counter on the Brood Scale, and then that makes another thing. And then I was like, yeah, so I have like 4 guys. My opponent has like 10. So I was very dead. But that was only game 2, and then I was on the play in game 3, and then I won super easily, and it was like, nice, my deck's great. And so I was very happy with my deck, and I was like, yeah, realistically, it feels like I kind of can't lose going into the finals, because like, I don't know, my deck just seems like it's really well positioned against the field. No super clear weaknesses, like, anyway, whatever. So I thought I was in great shape, and then I'll look up another card for you guys, because this card kind of single-handedly killed me. I mean, other stuff happened as well. The old Dreadhound. Yeah, so Dreadhound. This card used to be in fact, might still be in my Peasant Cube, but it's been a long time. What if Colossal Dreadhound, was also kind of a Sir Conrad? That's basically the idea with this card. It's like, you're going to mill 3 cards, and then whenever something dies or is put into a graveyard. So look at this. Whenever a creature dies or a creature is put into a graveyard from a library, right? Not your graveyard from your library, right? So that hopefully that should be sending some alarm bells to you guys. I cast the saddest Satyr Wayfinder of all time. I cast a Satyr Wayfinder where I looked at my top 4 cards, I found 0 lands, and I found 4 creatures, and I domed myself for 4 off my opponent's Dreadhound and died. I mean, I wasn't like at 4 life, but yeah, anyway, the point was like I just couldn't beat it. Like my opponent, it was just like just put random stuff into play, just like he milled himself over and over or whatever. And then he had a Woe Strider. Woe Strider, like Woe Strider is a cool card, don't get me wrong. My deck cannot beat a Woe Strider. I guess I have exactly Silk Wrap and Hanged Executioner, but everything else does not really interact well. Twice I actually had to put Captured by Legax on it, which you would think, oh, okay, Captured by Legax, that's not so bad on the Woe Strider because they can't sack it in response because it sacks another creature, which at least means I got the 2 counters. And hey, it's better than destroying it and having it escape and come back, right? That's what you would think, or at least that's kind of what I thought. I was wrong because, they still have that sack outlet in play, and that means that they can kind of just deal me a bunch of damage with the Dreadhound whenever from the Woe Strider. So, yeah, that was very rough. I mean, I won a game, and I won it in pretty spectacular fashion. I mean, my opponent was like putting up a fight, more than they needed to. Or, no, that's not a good way of putting it. More like more than I expected them to. Oh, but yeah, I got to really do some cool stuff. I also had Fauna Shaman. Fauna Shaman was awesome. I mean, I got to do really cool things. I got to put Honored Hydra into the graveyard and then embalm it with the Fauna Shaman. I got to like tutor up Noise Marine. I got to tutor up Evolution Witness and like get back the thing that I discarded. Like there are just so many cool things to do with Fauna Shaman, so that was really, really awesome. I got to do this like goofy thing with like Woodland Acolyte where I was like, I didn't have mana to like cast Noise Marine. I was like short by 1. And so I got to go, and I think it was in the graveyard. Or wait, oh no, I wasn't short by 1. Or wait, oh no, I think I actually might have been. Anyway, whatever. So I was short some mana for this. Oh, and I got to do cool stuff with the Incubation Druid as well. I forgot about this. And just like cool stuff with the Proliferate, and anyway, it was just really, really cool. I got to attack with like Noise Marine or just like some 3/2 opponent blocks with a 2/2, and then I go 5 mana, level up the Incubation Druid, so I now have kind of a Gilded Lotus, and then tap that for 3 mana, for 3 green, activate Fauna Shaman, pitch some creature, find Bannerhide Cruciak, use the Cruciak, grow the Noise Marine. So I basically put the Cruciak into my graveyard, level up the Incubation Druid, kill my opponent's thing, and grow my guy. So that was awesome. Stuff like that, and then I don't know. That's probably most of it. I mean, this deck was really cool. It was sweet. It was just really fun to play. Oh, and then yeah, also the Woodland Acolyte thing. There was like a turn where I like didn't quite have enough mana to do what I wanted with like a Noise Marine or whatever. So instead it was like Fauna Shaman, oh, what did I do? Yeah, I think it was Fauna Shaman, tutor up Evolution Witness, get back Woodland Acolyte, mend the wilds, put the Noise Marine on top of the library, cast the Woodland Acolyte, draw the Noise Marine. And this was instead of being able to cast the Noise Marine. So I think I want to say I had 10 mana in order to do that. Let's check. So it's 1 mana for the Fauna Shaman, 5 mana here, 4 mana there. So yeah, that's 10. So I had 10 mana on that turn, and if I had 11, then I could have just cast the Noise Marine. But yeah, anyway, I mean, this is the next best thing. So yeah, that was really, really sweet. I mean, there were so many cool things that I got to do with this deck. The mana was really good. So really, very, very small number of critiques. I would say somehow if it could be a little bit easier to win games on the draw, that would be great. And the other thing would just be like, just some of these cards that are like a little bit tricky to interact with, something like Dreadhound. Like this, it's definitely a bit tricky to interact with, and especially Woe Strider just as a card where, most of my removal spells don't really do anything against it. But yeah, this thing just dealt me obscene amounts of damage. Like my opponent, I was at like, I don't know, I want to say I was at like 13 or something before my opponent played a Dreadhound. And then they played the Dreadhound and I just like died like the next turn. It was like, what happened? Anyway, absurd. But yeah, I think that is pretty much it. We've been going for about an hour, talked about the 3 decks. Had a good time. I'll mention the records briefly once again. Went 201 here. Went 2-1 here, you know, more or less losing to the best cards in the cube. And then here, yeah, I mean, this was much fairer and closer than my loss here. Also, I fought much harder here than I did there. I mean, I tried to fight hard here, but I just felt like, I don't know, there's more fighting to be done here. Yeah, anyway. All right, well, yeah, I think that'll be it. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you have enjoyed this. It's been the rare face cam stream for me, and hopefully I haven't looked too, you know, totally disoriented or exhausted the entire time. But yeah, anyway, thanks for tuning in, and see you guys next time. Hopefully next CubeCon or, you know, whatever, we'll see you guys there.